theory. I don't think that I would hear like different feedback and different comments, but one that I thought was very interesting is that they said that a leader that was human couldn't lead a large organization, right? And I always like remember, oh, that's kind of an interesting comment, right? That if you are a human-centered leader, you really will not be able to lead large organizations. So what I've been doing is, with more research, we're collaborating with other experts around the world, just trying to, get the information, the facts, the, documentation about human-centered leadership and the number of human-centered leaders that are out there. So, and right here, for those of you that are in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, there are a number of great human-centered leaders that are really doing an amazing job, not only leading their companies to fantastic growth, but what they're doing, for their people, their employees, the communities where they participate. So with that, for me, it's really an honor to have with us tonight, David Mortenson. So David is someone that I know, personally, and, you are here a lot of wonderful stories tonight, but I want to start by introducing David, and I'm going to introduce him formally, with his bio. But David is the CEO of a parent company, M.A. Mortenson Companies, and he is the chairman of Mortenson Construction, a privately held international design and construction company headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where many of us are right now. It's one of the largest contractors in America. Mortenson now has more than 6,000 team members in 11 North American offices. David leads a business that specializes in everything from renewable energy to sports stadiums, from hospitals to data center. David joined the family business in 1991 after serving as the Combat Information Center officer on board on the USS Hewitt. And we have Margie, and I know others who have served as well, so there's that connection there. He led the company's West Coast business for 6 years before returning to company headquarters in 2007, and has been the driving force in positioning Mortenson as an industry leader in leveraging technology to transform the design and construction industry. So many of you that are here in Minnesota and have been to, TCF Bank Stadium, the US Bank Stadium, and a lot of sport stadium here that was done by Mortenson Construction. David has lived in Japan and Northern Ireland and has had direct responsibility for the company's Shanghai office for 9 years. So that's the whole professional piece. And I want to also include some of his personal information. So he's an active community member, serving as a trustee on the University of Minnesota Foundation Board, as a member of the Executive Committee of the Minnesota Business Partnership, a member of the Itasca Project, where I met David through the Itasca Project. He was a former chair, and he's the corporate director of Bedford Technologies, Hillcrest Capital Partners, so director of North Star Council of the Boy Scout, and serves as a founding board member of Greater MSP and former trustee with the Minneapolis Foundation. There's more about, stuff there, but I can tell you that he's been busy. He's been very involved, done a lot of things, but besides everything that was on that piece of paper, I want to say that I met David, I don't know, about 6 years ago, and as busy as he is as leading a large organization, every time that I have had, difficult moments that I have looked up to him and reached out to for help, he has, always made the time. I've visited him in his office. I've been to his home, and it's just an amazing and very inspiring, and it's very encouraging that large organizations are actually led by human-centered leaders like David, who is here with us tonight. So what I'd like for us is to have the opportunity to engage with David, to ask him, what is human-centered leadership? What is the role of human-centered leadership? How can we lead, in a more human way? And those of you that have questions in terms of whether it's real or not, and what can we do? We received some of those questions already. Have the opportunity to have that conversation tonight. And this is not about just asking questions. Feel free to say what you have. So welcome, David. Thank you so much for making the time to be with us tonight.
Well, thank you everyone for being patient with some technological difficulties. Tamara and Luis, I'm honored to be here. This subject is obviously close to my heart, and it's an exciting time, frankly. I think George Floyd's murder has really amplified how much leadership matters and how much human-centered leadership matters. And so I think this is a great opportunity for all of us as leaders to explore what that means and how we can get better.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And so I appreciate it. One of the things that we are doing today, so we're going to do a dynamic. So many of you on the call know me and my work. I've been, collaborating with other experts in human-centered leadership and emotional intelligence. And I have with me Tamara Torres. So Tamara Torres, I have collaborated with now for, a couple of years. And Tamara has been, working on what she, the first training that Tamara had, which was productivity with heart. It focuses on how we can really, use techniques to organize our time so that we can have more time to be productive, but also to connect with the things that matter to us. Tamara has been training, a lot of people on mindfulness. And then now more recently, Tamara, you've been doing work on success. What's the name of a most recent training, Tamara?
Owning your success through accountability.
For that. Okay, thank you so much. Owning your success. So, Tamara, you can share more about what you've been doing recently. But what we're gonna do is Tamara and I engage, with David and go, through the topics. But I obviously give you the opportunity for everyone here to ask questions to David directly or say, your own thoughts and comments about it. But Tamara, you want to share a little bit about yourself quickly before we get started?
Well, first I want to introduce you as well, since not everybody on the call knows you. Luis Moreno is training a new generation of leaders to be more human. He has over 18 years of corporate experience in 7 Fortune 500 companies. He leverages his expertise in human-centered leadership and emotional intelligence to collaborate with other experts like David and myself, and in order to foster workplace cultures that are healthier and happier. So I wanted to make sure that everybody gets an introduction to Luis. And for myself, I'm really happy to be here. The perspective that I bring here is more mindfulness based, and mindfulness and meditation are one of the key ways that we can learn to improve our emotional intelligence, to become more empathetic. So I have lots of thoughts on that, and I'm definitely looking forward to hearing other people's thoughts. As Luis said, not just questions that you have for us, but just comments of what you've noticed in your lives. And we realize that there's a lot of knowledge on this call outside of those that are supposed to be just the official experts or panelists. So I'm excited for the conversation and to learn from all of you.
Perfect. Let's start with a question. So David, we already received a question from a person that is here with us tonight. So it says, when coworkers talk negatively about other peers among each other, this is known to be incivility. When leadership is aware and takes no action, should you ignore it and move on as if it didn't exist? Doesn't this create a negative, toxic culture and increase tension? If you do address it, how would you do it in a human-centered way? And the person shares, I have addressed it in both in real time publicly and privately a few weeks later via email. I am interested in dialogue and discussion about this. So peers talking, bad mouthing other peers. Anybody had that situation, David? What is your thought as a leader? Ever been in that situation throughout your career?
I think that's a really good question, and it has a lot of aspects to it because it's not just about people talking negatively, it's about inappropriate jokes. Frankly, it would be the same thing if you encountered or there was a safety violation and you just walked by it. When leaders do nothing, the person assumes that they are condoning the behavior. So as a leader, it is really imperative to step up and address the issue. Now, I always say the most important thing to do is not do it in a confrontational way. You don't, if somebody makes a inappropriate joke, sometimes you have to address it right then and there. Or if they make an inappropriate comment, but more oftentimes it's important to address it both with the perpetrator in private to say, listen, this is not what we expect. This isn't our culture. These are not our values. These are the kinds of things that we're trying to perpetuate as a business. And sometimes the person on the receiving end you need to follow up with also. But doing nothing is not an option.
There was David, I think there is a story in your career wherein some time ago when you were with a client and there was a situation then with a client, and in this case, how do you do? How do we go about it when the person who, or I would ask it more general then, what happens when the person who does the inappropriate comment or the negative action or behavior is our boss,
Right.
or our leader, someone of a higher authority, or the client.
In my case, yeah, our customer. And I was a young project manager in my early 30s on a large $100 million project with a customer who was in their mid to late 50s. And he was frankly using inappropriate language and was berating the designer in a meeting in front of everyone. And I wasn't going to confront it right there in the meeting, but after I checked my own values and gained a little courage, I went right over to his office and I said, I wasn't comfortable, and here's why. I don't think what you did was appropriate. He didn't say very much at the time, but the next day he came back to me, he apologized. And when we started the next meeting, he apologized to everyone.
Wonderful.
You take no action, he might perpetrate the same language and poor behavior. You take action and the person realizes their own mistake and corrects it.
Perfect. Thank you, David. And we have, as you were speaking, people are sending us here multiple comments. So let's go ahead and I'm going to address some of these. So Len sent us and say, that we should be dedicated to building a society of ethical leaders. I like that, Len. Thank you so much. Great comment. Lisette Redding says, I'm at the office, cannot turn the camera. I had a chance of attending similar emails. I've always found them highly enriching. So let's see, how to make things work on a more empathetic way. And I get this question a lot, David. So people that here really have interest in having more empathetic work environments, but are not finding it easy when how do you change work environment to make it more empathetic, right? Lisette says, I believe that one way in which today we can achieve that on projects and economy, connecting with the COVID crisis is by considering the needs of each of the members of our team, leaving behind the way of thinking of believing that the members of a team are only robots. Wow, and that are there to do a job, but rather that they are human beings with needs and capabilities who, when taken into account and considered, make them feel integrated as part of a great family that will always see for the benefit of all, which will consequently lead to a corporate group growth. I love that. And I tell you that for years, training on human-centered leadership, I get this a lot where people say, I am in a work environment that is not very empathetic. I like to do something. I don't know what to do. And then hearing Lisette's word, kind of like this thinking that is more like robots that need to get a job done. How to bring some, David, share your thoughts. And then for anyone, after David that wants to add, your thoughts, what are things that have worked for you in terms of making work environments be, more human?
I'd be interested, how many of you have seen Google's research on high-performing teams?
I have.
Anybody out? Yeah, a number of you.
Aristotle, right?
You know, the thing that always has resonated with me is high-performing teams have psychological safety.
Mm-hmm.
And psychological safety comes from trust. And trust comes from empathy. And you only gain empathy by slowing down and taking the time to really know, understand, and care. And that's something we don't do often enough in business. We rush right in to problem solving and action. And when a team comes together, building that foundation of trust and mutual understanding, so there's empathy, is a necessary first step.
Perfect. Thank you. David, Tamara, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm thinking that since so many of us have transitioned to working from home, that managers are really needing to check in more consistently. Like, we can't necessarily see each other face to face or run into each other if we used to work in the office space together. I think managers are really tasked with saying, how are things going? Like, I know you have a toddler at home, and sometimes they run into the Zoom call, and I'm sure you worry about it being distracting to the rest of the meeting members. But that must be difficult for you. So showing that empathy of, what you may be noticing in the people that work with you, trying to be empathetic and understanding, but also just more consistently opening those lines of communication. I think also working from home, we have now these computer meetings on Zoom calls are becoming kind of windows into the homes of each individual. And we didn't expect to, instead of working from home, we're now living at work. And so it can be a very vulnerable situation, not just because dogs are barking and things like that, or you have to fix the bookshelf behind you. We're getting more intimate access to each other's lives just by seeing into each other's homes. And that's a very vulnerable situation. But I think there's also more of an opportunity for us to connect differently and maybe create some deeper understandings.
Yeah. And one last comment that I would add to that is I remember, so how leadership is evolving over time, that mentors used to tell mentees, it's like the trick to success is focus on yourself, focus on yourself, focus on yourself. And I think that language is changing, where it is obviously you need to focus on yourself, but then you also can open that focus so that you're not only focusing on yourself, but you're also focusing on the environment, on who else is, in your team. Like David was talking earlier about Google, about working in teams, is, you have to focus on yourself, but also focus on the other team and the needs of others. So servant leadership. And we have Gary Lindblad is asking us a question. How is human-centered leadership different and similar to servant leadership? Who wants to take that one? I have some thoughts there, but anyone?
I was going to ask you that question, Luis.
Okay, and so I think obviously there is similarities. Part of it is I know people using different terms. I know that like some folks are talking about heart healthy leadership, and then also leadership with the heart. But I think when I think of human-centered leadership, I think of leaders that, because I don't see it as either or. So a human-centered leadership is not one that, is not worried about the, financial well-being of the company, but is one who obviously has, a vision, has the drive to take the organization to where it needs to go and have, strong business results. But at the same time shows the characteristic human qualities, right? And those include, and you mentioned some of those earlier, David, of, empathy, compassion, understanding, trust, right? And I see it, for example, like when psychological safety. So when someone makes mistakes, I have been, And I'm sure a number of you have been in the situation where you make an honest mistake. You're working on a project and something, kind of goes, it actually happened to me not too long ago. And it depends on what kind of leadership you are under, because, it can be that you could either be under a type of leadership that gives you the environment and the platform to be able to go. And like, if I work for David, I can see how David, I would go to you and say, hey, here is what's happening. I made this mistake, honest mistake. What can we do? And that you would have that leader, that human-centered leader is a leader that connects on the human side to say, hey, thank you for coming and telling me. Let's look at, let's get all the information. Let's see how we're going to go about this and stuff. And then so show, understanding, and give a person another opportunity and help the person to resolve the problem, right? In a different type of leadership, you can be in a situation where you don't even want to bring it up. Not only that you wouldn't be so excited to, or you don't want to go and volunteer the information, but there are instances where good people, find themselves kind of looking for ways to hide the mistake that has happened because of the terror, the panic that mistake gets discovered. And actually, in some of the companies that have been involved in public scandals, when they do the investigation, and they realize that there were employees that knew about the situation, and some either didn't know what to do, were scared to bring up information. Some had tried to bring up the information, and then they were blocked kind of like by middle managers. So it's just kind of fascinating, right? That if we create it, if we create a human-centered leadership, or if we create a more human environment based on human-centered leadership, where people feel the psychological safety to speak up and say what's happening, it can actually save you money, right? A lot of money in litigation, in the cost and the risk of certain industries, where if the information, if we don't address those mistakes, they can end up being very costly mistakes. So,
one thing that I would say, Luis, is I think human-centered leadership is a really important part of servant leadership. It is a pillar on which servant leadership stands. I don't know if you think of it that way, but one of the reasons I think of it that way is human-centered leadership puts people at the center, and understanding each individual and their needs and their capabilities and leveraging their strengths. My dad used to like to quote a Chinese proverb, which said, if you're planning for a year, plant wheat. If you're planning for 10 years, plant trees. If you are planning for a lifetime, plant people.
Wow. That's beautiful. I love it. So yes, David, I agree. Definitely human-centered leadership being one component of servant leadership. Thank you, Gary, for that great question. I think Gary is in California, right? Peter Machado, and I'm behind on the comments. Thank you so much for so many comments. I think I'm behind about 17 comments, but I'll read some. So David, back when you were talking about addressing comments, Peter Machalik says that it's important to address those inappropriate, behavior in a human-centered way, because you can often make things worse if you address inappropriateness in an inappropriate way. I love that, right? So the mistake has already been made, and then you make it even worse. Let's see, we should seek to first to understand and then to be understood. I love that. This allows us to form our judgment around someone's intent versus their delivery. Often the offensive comment was born from a pure intent. Exactly. So sometimes someone can say something offensive purposefully because they want to hurt, but sometimes some people may, who lack the actual training, may say something that is inappropriate, and then not necessarily.
The other thing I would say, Luis, is to be understood, you must first seek to understand. And to be heard, you must first seek to listen.
I love that.
And this was another great quality of my dad's. His ability to ask questions and listen first made people and their opinions rise to the top, even more important than his own, because that's where he spent his time and energy and engagement. And once people felt like they were important, it created a culture of care and empathy and collaboration and a feeling like you were empowered.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Yeah. How do people feel, right? Angelo is like, you can, you will never forget how people make you feel. So Bobby Casimir, thank you so much for the comment there. Len Sean asks us, are you familiar with Robert Greene's 48 laws of power? And are these leadership laws human-centered? So Len, I have not read it myself, Robert Greene's 48 laws of power. Have you, David or Tamara or anyone tonight read Robert Greene's 48 laws of power?
No. I have not. I had some thoughts to share on what Bobby and Peter had said, though, when we get back to that.
Go ahead.
So to Peter's comments about addressing things that are inappropriate, I think the corporate world has become a lot more culturally sensitive this year, given circumstances, long overdue. And going back to what David had said earlier, is like, if we see something that's inappropriate, if we don't take action, then we're kind of complicit in supporting that. And so I think what we see is maybe less overt inappropriate activity, but what we're seeing more and starting to recognize more is perhaps like microaggressions that people are just now becoming aware of as a result of unconscious biases that are coming to light. And I think as more of us are becoming more sensitive and finally being open to different types of training to see our own biases, that's been really helpful in the workplace and in interpersonal relationships in general. And then what Bobby was saying about the intention behind our comment, I think another wonderful advantage of emotional intelligence is that self-regulation and self-management, self-awareness, where we can take a step back and say, maybe that's not what they meant, and to look for that intent. A lot of what mindfulness in particular teaches us is to really pause and to learn to slowly respond instead of reacting, and that can be huge. And just thinking about some of the other components of emotional intelligence, in addition to that self-awareness and regulation, there's this intrinsic motivation to do things because it's right, and there's that empathy that Luis is so good at explaining, and just the social skills, the interpersonal skills, communication being one of those skills. And so we know that when we can learn to be emotionally intelligent, it's good for us, it's good for our colleagues, it's good for our teams, and ultimately it's good for the entire organization and for our productivity and bottom line.
Yeah, and I want to share something that you reminded me of, Tamara, that there philosophically, there is this concept of disconnecting responsibility from guilt, and then that we say from fault, I think. So when we say we're all responsible. So I say, for example, okay, David, you are responsible. But when someone's here, you are responsible, people think that what is being said to them is you are guilty, like, you caused it. But actually, you are responsible. We are all responsible. Being responsible doesn't mean that we caused the problem or that we are, guilty. What it means is that we have a responsibility. We all have a responsibility to make things better. So, for example, going back, I think that this is the comment of the night, is how to address when, inappropriateness or something, like bad behavior, that we all have a role in that. So in this case is when we are in the room and something happens, a comment, that it's not the right comment, then we are all responsible, because it doesn't matter that we didn't say it. We were there in the room. So we have a responsibility to do something about it. And I have to share something that is very encouraging. Over the past, like 6 months, a number of folks have contacted me to share with me that one of the things that is changing for them, this year with what happened, with social disparities, what they have learned is that they said, over my career, I have witnessed injustices done to other people. So because they were not being done to me, I remain, kind of indifferent. I didn't do anything about it, and I was okay with it. But I am no longer okay with it. So in the next time that I see, when I see an injustice done to somebody else, I will intervene and I will say something, I will do something, even when it is not to me. And I think that's very encouraging and inspiring, because that can transform our world when we all really care about any injustice. We have, it's like I can't keep up with all the comments, but I want to try to read some. So let's see. We have again more and more questions around team dynamics, and we have a question here from Len that says, "What does it take to better understand a large team?" So hold on that, Len. We'll combine it with other questions that are coming, similar questions on the team part. Can we list the attributes of human-centered leaders? So Christy Lassenberry, how are you? We have, I think that we addressed that after you posted the question. Let's see, Terry Gibbs says, I'm wondering if you try to create a workplace that helps people meet their fundamental needs. In particularly, are you aware of the alternative Nobel Prize winning fundamental needs work by Dr. Manfred Max Neef? I have a paper that I've written about it if you're interested. So yes, Terry, definitely. So I have not read it. I am interested in the paper. Please send it to me. Anybody has read the, let's see, what is it called? From Dr. Manfred Max Neef. Anybody familiar with that material? Oh, okay. Let's see. So, okay, more interest in human-centered leadership. I'm currently in the medical device industry, leading clinical trials. Very good. So how do we help people feel like they belong? How do we create the human-centered feeling? I'll go back to you, David. In your experience as a leader in your career, what have you done to help create an environment where people feel that they belong, that human-centered feeling?
Well, I think, Luis, if we're honest with ourselves, we have to recognize how far we have to go, where each individual feels like they can show up at work their full selves, and that they don't have to code switch. They don't have to put themselves into some shielded or shallow box that is defined by a culture in which they are working. It's one of the things, frankly, I learned post George Floyd, is that inclusive culture where people feel empowered to be themselves is a long way off. And it's a process of training and educating and constant reinforcement of what our expectations are as an organization in terms of values and culture that we expect everybody to be able to have and to share. It's a quest that we're on to create that environment, but I would be mistaken if I was going to tell you that we're anywhere close to arriving.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for the honesty. Another human quality there, honesty. So I really appreciate it.